transform all with a meditative mind of samadhi. The initial verse, with concentration of samadhi, which I broadly put as stillness and careful cultivation of contemplation. Is cultivation of contemplation. So that means contemplation has to be part of your cultivation. You can reach the clear and tranquil state that comes from the nature of true suchness. So, you know, in Tzu Chi, because I don't know Mandarin, Jing Si means meditation, right? So, so there's a lot of connectivity to that. But let me go on to this verse first, because I think I was trying to resonate with the teaching the Master gave a few days ago, was it last week, about the 4 jhanas. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of one great cause, return to Sahawa to save sentient beings. And that is the aspiration, the spiritual aspiration of all Bodhisattvas. And they think that Buddhas really, I mean, from my point of view, the Buddhas really don't return to the Sahawa because they have attained enlightenment as a Buddha. Bodhisattva does, but then the question is, when this context, when the Buddhas return to the Sahawa, meaning they take and the enlightenment as in the Sahawa. Okay, so then, for example, Sakyamuni Buddha, he was already a Bodhisattva, but he attained enlightenment as a Buddha. That's why the Buddhas are in the Sahawa. So Master's explanation. Samadhi, which I refer to as stillness, is right concentration, right thinking, right mindfulness. So let's look at it in this context. Okay, let me finish this line first. And a proper mindset. So samadhi lies in a single-minded concentration, and I put the word focus in there. You see, the word, personally, I would prefer the word focused, because when you go into a meditative state and you concentrate, the problem with going to stillness of your mind is that the thoughts will arise. When a thought arises and you concentrate, you're giving energy to that thought and you engage with the thought. And therefore, you tend to fight with that thought. The more you fight with that thought, the more the thought will fight back. And that's how it works. So this concentration, and is an English word, and I don't know what the Chinese word for that word is, so I would tend to use the word focus. Different, I think, of focus is, the focus I'm referring to is to observe the thought, the arising of thought, but not to concentrate on that thought. So when you focus on that, or you observe the thought, you just watch it. And because you do not engage with that thought will cease. So if it arises, it will abide. It may even change, but it will cease. And you just observe in that moment of stillness. Right thinking is obviously the thought that arises, right? So when we, in the state of our practice, and practice for us supposedly be a full-time practice. So although monastics are in a full-time practice, so they're in an environment where they always be in a state of practice. For us as householders, we are still living our worldly ways. So therefore, in the right thinking in this context is, even though we are at work, that right thinking must resonate with the Dhamma. And that is what it is. So therefore, without this right focus, it's very difficult to have this right thinking. Now, right mindfulness is an interaction between you and the, with people and with nature. So that's between you and them. That's a relationship between you and people and so on. So all this flows one after the other. And some Master when I say contemplation is a meditative state when our minds are pure, when the minds are pure. How can our minds be pure? Now, our minds can only be pure only when your heart is pure, because you see, the heart has a lot of, because the heart is capable of love, right? So love is also love is actually desirous. You desire something, you love someone, you want to possess that. And so that for many of our cultivation, we expand our heart. We don't drop the love off, right? So we expand our heart and we say we love our beings. So that those virtues will then cultivate towards loving kindness and compassion. So if you like, the heart become your storehouse of virtues. So when that happens, your minds will be open up to have clarity and become pure. Our thoughts are proper, right? So therefore, with the right understanding and the right thoughts, and here, then we become proper, and concentration on settling our minds. And this is focus, so that we do not get into a state whereby easily blown off by any worldly winds that come to us. So therefore, when we see the leaves which are blowing and moving in a tree, you can see the stillness of the leaf, and it's a clear and a tranquil state, and brings near of a nature or true suchness. And this is where our pure nature, our true nature, or the Buddha nature is. And to do that, so what we are doing in here, this whole practice in here, aren't we excavating all the layers of incrustation that is piling in our heart and the obscuration in the mind? So then when you do that, as you unearth, so we actually, in a whole practice, we are throwing away all the rubbish within us. And as you do that, and if the true suchness is intrinsic in all of us, that means the light is already within there. It's just enshrouded, it's been covered by all these layers of incrustation. So in the practice of losing everything, it will start to illuminate through you from your inner light. Now, the next one here, I quite like this sentence: carrying firewood and water is also meditation. Our attitude and action can be meditation. So the way we live must not be removed from the meditative state of concentration or samadhi. So this meditative state does not mean that you are sitting. So you can also apply throughout the day. And this is more so for us as a householders, because we actually are working, we are socially engaging, we are doing all the other activities, we've got a family to attend to. So all this is a state of calmness that we should be able to attain right throughout in whatever we do, doesn't matter it's work or play. Now, carrying firewood and water is also meditation. So that reminds me, I may have shared with you this Zen story. This was this Zen master was saying, before enlightenment, I chop wood. After enlightenment, I chop wood. So this state of practice, it doesn't mean that the moment you have attained or just attained your spiritual growth, it changes what you do. So if you're an accountant, you still be an accountant. The only thing is what's within you, and that's your inner light, which is in here. And that's the main difference. So that's why some people, with their aura, you see someone and you can feel the aura that is emanating from the person's inner light that you can feel. Even though we are constantly in a constantly troubled world, we can apply the concentration samadhi to contemplate earnestly. And this is more so for us. Look at the tumultuous times that we have right now. We got a COVID-19 pandemic. We got the trade war was going on. Even our country where it is right now, there's so much uncertainty that's coming that we have to deal with. And more so that these are the conditions that we got to learn to practice. So therefore, going back to here, this part, so if you concentrate or engage inside it, you'll be absorbed into those state of turmoil. But if we can just be in the stillness and see what we can learn and observe that, but not without engaging in it, there's a lot to learn actually, if you contemplate and every event that happens. So the state of mind consciousness is that the Buddha has liberated from cyclic existence and the Sahara, and because he returned back, so because it's loving kindness. So he had great patience and endurance. And this is a key thing about patience and endurance, or patience and perseverance. So therefore, the conditions that we are in, when we practice in this state of this contemplative state, is for us to have this patience and perseverance. And very often, when something happens, we tend to react. And this react will punch through the patience and perseverance. So therefore, we need to continue to practice and practice until we get that truth to emulate what the Buddha did. So with loving kindness, the Buddha and Bodhisattvas abide in the Sahara. This place, the Sahara is a place that's hard to patiently endure. Because it's hard to patiently endure, that's the best place to learn to be patiently endure. Therefore, the Sahara is a wonderful training ground, isn't it? So where did the Buddha Sakyamuni attain enlightenment? Is in the Sahara, in this particular world that we have. So therefore, we don't treat all these difficult conditions as storms in our life, but it's for us to wash away our afflictions through this training. So he's the guiding teacher of the three realms, which we know about the three realms. Master has spoken so often, kind father of the four kinds of beings, that obviously the airborne, womb-born, moisture-born, and transform-born. And that's more than 2,500 years ago. But loving kindness have lived in our minds. So he has given us the footprint of this, of the Dhamma. And so therefore we need to, that's why very often when we hear the Dharma, we hear of the stories of the, especially the Bhagavad tales, for us to be able to understand the state of mind of the Buddha and how he actually deal with those situations and external conditions. So after we understand the Dharma, we can also awaken our unconditional loving kindness and universal compassion. And this is the part that I mentioned earlier about the heart that is so expansive that is universal. So whenever it's universal, there's no one you cannot forgive, right? And there's no one you cannot love, because you have that heart that acts nothing else except loving kindness and compassion. So this is part that we likewise feel others people pain and suffering as our own, and that's why we would this is what caring is about. Bodhisattvas exercise compassion and great vows and return to the Sahara, and this is the first Bodhisattva vows. Right? We vow to deliver them all until there's no more beings in the samsara world. So the lessons learned is that the Buddha used the Dhamma to teach and guide every one of us. Whether teachings are seen or heard, we must practice in accordance with them. This is the Buddha mind. So the Buddha's mind and the mind of sentient beings are same in essence. That means we can emulate that. And that is by provided we can apply that Buddha Dharma and the Dharma in us and apply that in our daily life. So when each one of us accepts the Dharma, we have the Buddha in our minds, and then the Buddha becomes the master of the house. So therefore, you remember, I think I shared with you yesterday or the day before, is about we got to be the master of our mind. But otherwise, the mind becomes the master of us. So the mind should be your servant, not your master. And this is where then we can have the Buddha nature in us. And the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they return to the Sahava, and this be mindful of the Bodhisattva that we have. So even if you attain enlightenment, you're supposed to return back to the Sahava, and that's the vow. So if we can open our mind so that they can encompass the universe and become one with it, and helping sentient beings over to go with the word of ourselves to the greatest goal. And that is the power in your aspiration, right? So this will be your part of your 4 fulfilling powers. So contemplation. I may have shared with you something similar before. Contemplation is simple when you know how. Just one is supposed to be simple in life, yet many find it difficult to be simple. And that's where our worldly life, or especially as the householders, you see, for the monastic, they have left the worldly life. Right? But for us, this is why it's supposed to be simple. We're supposed to be simple in life. The problem is the more we are successful in life, the more complicated in our life, and we make it difficult. So because of this, it becomes very difficult to be simple. But such is the worldly ways. So life is made complicated by man, and one has difficulty being simple as a result of this. Well, it must be simple to be simple. If you are simple, so it's therefore simple for one who is simple to contemplate when the mind is not distracted by the complexity of thoughts. So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. So in relationship, and sometimes when one who have that in the practice, especially trying to resonate to today's teaching, so we need to learn to listen to our relationship. And contemplative listening is the skill of listening with the stillness. And sometimes in a relationship, we try to talk and impose our ways and the silence of the mind. Okay, Gan En, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, Gan En. So much, Brother Chin, for another round of marvelous